Okay, picture this. You've done it again. Dinner just ended and you said maybe 4 sentences total the entire evening, and I'm willing to bet one of them was just pass the salt, right? Everyone else around the table was talking like it was a competitive sport. They were overlapping, interrupting each other, laughing uproariously at jokes that nobody even bothered to finish. And you? Well, you just sat there, listening, nodding, maybe occasionally smiling at something you weren't fully following. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to unpack the fascinating psychology of people who don't talk much, and I promise you, we are going to completely change how you view quietness. So you leave the dinner party, and on the drive home, your partner turns to you and asks if you had a good time. And you did. Honestly, you really did. But you can literally see the question forming on their face before they even ask it. Why don't you talk more? Okay, let's dive into this because the answer is entirely different from what most people naturally assume. Listen to me carefully here. You are not shy, you are not boring, and you are certainly not broken. You're expensive. And this perfectly captures the core reality of a quiet person's mind. Your words literally cost more cognitive energy to produce than other people's words do. Because they have such a high internal production cost, you just spend them incredibly carefully. Section 1. Inside the quiet brain. Let's look at how you're actually processing the world around you. To really grasp why this happens, we have to look under the hood at the mechanical differences in how quiet brains process everyday conversations compared to loud brains. See, most brains run conversation on what we can call the autopilot brain. Words come in, words go right back out, it's easy, it's fast, and it's totally automatic. But a quiet person's brain, it doesn't do that. It operates on the checkpoint brain system. Every single thing runs through a rigorous internal filtering process before it ever reaches the mouth. Words come in, they get aggressively filtered, and only then do words go out. Let's break down that filter for a second. Here are the specific 4 steps your brain is running through in real time during a chat. 1. Is this true? 2. Is it useful? 3. Has somebody already said it? And 4. Is it worth saying out loud, or is it just worth thinking? Now, here's the catch. By the time you finish running a single thought through this incredibly thorough 4-step checkpoint, the conversation has already moved on 3 topics. So what happens? You say nothing, and everyone in the room wrongly assumes you just had nothing to say. Section 2. The science of silence. Let's dig into the biological research. Because this isn't just some quirky habit, it is actually hardwired. Back in the 1980s, a Harvard psychologist named Jerome Kagan started this massive, long-running study with babies. He discovered that around 20% of these infants reacted intensely to anything new in their environment. A new face, a sudden sound, a mobile spinning over their crib, all of these things provoked a hard, intense reaction. Decades later, when Kagan followed up, those exact same babies had grown up to be the quiet ones at the party, the watchers, the careful ones. Kagan coined a term for them. He called them high reactive. And here is the kicker from his research. He didn't find that these high reactive kids were broken. Far from it. He found they were actually absorbing way more. They were constantly noticing all the subtle details that the loud kids completely missed. But the cost of taking in so much data is that they process slower, simply because there was way more data to process. Imagine trying to translate a dense paragraph in your head while everyone else is just glancing at a headline. That is exactly what a quiet person is doing at a party. And the science gets even more interesting when we look at adult interactions. In 2010, a University of Arizona researcher named Matthias Mall did something unprecedented. He recorded thousands of hours of regular, everyday conversation. And he found that people who engaged in more substantive talks and much less small talk were measurably happier. This proved something absolutely vital. Quiet people aren't avoiding connection, they are actively filtering for it. Section 3. The cost of being quiet. Navigating a loud world. Now, as wonderful as that deep processing is, navigating a loud world with a quiet brain exacts a very real emotional and professional toll. If you're a quiet person, you have likely heard this more times than you can possibly count. Are you okay? Oh man, it is sheer exhaustion. You're constantly being interrogated by acquaintances who take one look at your thoughtful silence and immediately mistake it for sadness or anger. I mean, I'd conservatively estimate you've been asked if you are okay something like 247 times by people you barely even know. And the irony? You are perfectly okay. You were completely fine right up until they asked you. Honestly, you're probably slightly less okay now precisely because they interrupted your piece to ask. But it gets even more painful in a professional setting. Look at this incredibly familiar scenario. The work meeting just ended. You had 3 real, highly processed ideas, maybe 4, but none of them made it out. Meanwhile, Brad in marketing talked for what felt like 11 uninterrupted minutes about a weekend that absolutely nobody asked about. So what do? You drive home in sheer agony, replaying every moment you didn't speak. You replay the brilliant point you should have made at minute 14. You replay the perfect pushback you had at minute 22. You replay the joke that actually would have landed perfectly. And then comes the second cost, the one that truly hurts. People misread you entirely. They think quiet means you're cold. They think being reserved means you're judgmental. They assume you're not interested, when the honest truth is you are probably more interested and invested than anyone else in the entire room. But while you're being misread, you have to watch your loud friend get the promotion. You watch the guy who never shuts up get praised as a great communicator. You just sit there with your perfectly finished, edited, thought-through ideas and wonder if it would just be easier to talk more, even if half of it was complete nonsense, because it sure seems to work for everyone else. Section 4. The power of presence. Reframing this as a cognitive tool.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how it reframes everything we just learned into an incredible cognitive and social tool. Here's what nobody tells you. You're not quiet, you're loaded. See, loud rooms burn through words like cheap fuel. It's fast, it's smoky, and it's gone in 5 minutes. Quiet people don't fill silence with cheap fuel. When you finally do speak, people instinctively lean in. They quiet down. Why? Because underneath it all, people have learned that your words carry weight. You aren't the one filling the silence. You are the one breaking it.
Let's reinforce this. You're not boring, you're booked. Your mind isn't empty, it is incredibly busy. You are constantly processing, absorbing, and evaluating the dynamics of the room. You're doing heavy cognitive lifting while everyone else is just coasting along on autopilot. And to the people who say you just don't like others, no way. You're not antisocial, you're allergic to noise. You aren't avoiding people, you are avoiding the superficial, fast-burning interactions that drain your battery. You're seeking those substantive connections that Matthias Meal's research proved actually make us happier. Think about every deep secret a friend has ever confided in you. They didn't tell the loud friend, did they? They told you, because they knew you didn't broadcast. They knew the information wouldn't leak. Your silence isn't an absence, it's a vault. People implicitly trust the gravity that comes with a quiet nature. You are not the empty room. You are the room with weight to it. When people walk into a space with someone who is truly quiet, the air actually feels different. That is presence. People might mistakenly view your silence as an absence, but it is really the editor at work. Your mind is continuously cutting everything that doesn't matter so that what is left creates an undeniable, heavy, and meaningful presence. If you are a quiet person, you have a literal superpower of observation, processing, and presence. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative question to reflect on. What is the smallest, dumbest thing someone has ever said about your quietness that you still haven't forgotten? Think about the misunderstandings you faced over the years, but now reframe them through the lens of a highly tuned, deeply processing mind. Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and remember, your words are expensive. Keep spending them wisely.